Joining me now is my good friend and good friend of the show and good friend to taxpayers everywhere, Kris Sims from the Alberta Taxpayers Federation. Kris, let's talk about the gorilla in the room, and that is the memorandum of understanding with the Prime Minister on the potential for a pipeline where a private sector company has not even remotely proposed anything yet. It is my opinion that Danielle Smith is engaging in one last Hail Mary to try to get a pipeline done. My concern is, I think Alberta is giving a lot away without a guarantee of something in return. Give me your analysis.
I'm with you. I'm very concerned, but I wanted to start with the positives first.
That's
if
you.
They happen. Okay, I'm going to try. Because I can see the Premier is working. I can see that she's trying to maintain hope and keep moving forward, and I appreciate that. As someone who's probably more cynical than she is, I appreciate that she is trying, and she is trying to get a good deal for Alberta. That said, if it happened, if it actually came true, okay, magic sparkles occurred and it all came true, if we got the production cap lifted, if we got the West Coast tanker ban lifted, if we got a pipeline actually built out to the West Coast in order to ship our stuff over to Asia, if, and this part got missed, I find a lot, the green energy regulation things that were strangling the building of natural gas power plants,
Right.
If all of those things went away, that would be amazing. Like, straight up, that would be great. That would be very good for Alberta. Frankly, I'd be happier if they were talking about getting gas-fired power plants up and running so that all of us can have less expensive electricity bills and cheaper electricity in our homes and in our barns and in our workplaces, rather than pumping this whole AI thing, but I digress. That's me. I was raised on Terminator movies. So I get it. So if all of it came true, that would be great. I'm concerned that the devil's in the details here. And one of the big details is what Prime Minister Mark Carney stomped out and said to all of the media cameras that were waiting for him right after he signed. And that's where he said basically that, oh yeah, that carbon tax that's here in Alberta, that's going to be 6 times higher. Thanks very much. And so that was a problematic, as the kids say. And then when I saw economist Jack Mintz, who's no slouch, came out in the Financial Post right away, and I'm paraphrasing him, but I spoke with him on my show, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, yeah, Carney is taking what is currently known as the TIER program, industrial carbon tax here in Alberta, and he's adding up how much it costs now for carbon credits and carbon taxes, blah, blah, blah. And he said, yeah, that's around 6 times. And he was really raising the alarm bell, Dr. Mintz was, saying that if they layer on all of these carbon taxes and all of these complicated carbon credit systems with the sequestration and all this stuff, that it would make the production of a barrel of oil much more expensive. He said all combined, it could be as high as $10 extra US per barrel. Right. And for folks who are listening outside of Alberta, that's a huge hit. Okay, if you suddenly make the production by $10 a barrel US higher here in Alberta, that kind of prices us out of the market. And the reason why we talk about oil and gas so much isn't just because it provides great jobs for so many people and provides stuff that we all use. It's tied directly to the budget of Alberta, like the government of Alberta. The revenues go up and down based on the price of a barrel of oil. So this is why this is so essential. So I'm doing my best to take a page from what Premier Smith said in her last speech at the AGM, which I thought was very good tone, when she said, and she quoted Ronald Reagan saying, trust but verify. We've had the rug pulled out from under us before. We're going to be really cautious. I think that's the better tack to take.
I am under no illusions. This agreement is just the first step in this journey. There is much hard work ahead of us. And the federal government must earn back the trust of Albertans as we move through the next stages of this process. After all, the people of Alberta have, of course, had the rug pulled out from under them too many times to count over the past 10 years. So I will take the advice of a great U.S. President, Ronald Reagan, who said when dealing with a former adversary, trust but verify. And on behalf of Albertans, I will be verifying and holding Ottawa accountable, as you know, every step of the way. You can absolutely count on that.
Rather than look here at all the fireworks, everything's happy, don't look at the details. The details matter here.
Right. And, you know, that $6 to $10 a barrel per oil in additional production costs, that's a lot easier for the big five players like CNRL and Murray Edwards to absorb, given their involvement in the heavily subsidized carbon capture project, the Pathways Alliance, than the juniors and middle of the road producers. This sort of additional cost can make their projects and their investments completely unviable. And that's my concern in all of this, is this can become a damper to anybody but the big five.
Yeah, it's one of those things that once you live here and work here and like get around in the industry and stuff, you start to understand. I think a lot of people who are outside of Alberta might be thinking, oh, well, you know, if the oil companies are in favor of this, this must be a good thing, right, for their product. They want to get their product out to the port. They want to move their stuff through pipes. You'd be forgiven for thinking that. That sounds logical. But as my friend Franco Terrazzano pointed out in his book, those big oil company guys and gals, they were on stage when former NDP Premier Rachel Notley announced her consumer carbon tax.
Right.
She created a brand new one just for the province of Alberta under this notion of a social license. And if I'm taking her at her word, okay, let's just say for argument's sake, she really wanted a pipeline and I'm taking her at her word. It sounds so similar, Sheila.
Oh,
where
completely.
She was making the argument. Notley was making the argument then. Listen, folks, we want to get a pipeline built out to the West Coast. And in order to do that, we have to pay a price.
A carbon tax. Like literally, it's the same argument. I thought we left the flawed idea of social license in the dustbin of the Notley era, and we've resurrected it.
And I hope we haven't. I really hope. Okay, this is my hope. This is my hope. I hope that they have Carney signed on to these promises of lifting the production cap, getting, you know, approving, like for realsies, a pipeline being built out to the West Coast without using taxpayers' money. They have to get private people coming in here willing to build it, okay? And getting that tanker ban suspended and all of those good things. I really hope they're able to do that while really whittling down that carbon tax, that industrial carbon tax hard. Because I'm hearing from some proponents, Sheila, and I don't know if this makes sense because I'm not in the industry. Dr. Mintz told me yesterday that it doesn't make sense to him, but I'm hearing from some people who are around industry saying, listen, this is not the same as a consumer carbon tax. We can whittle this thing down to where it's basically oil companies passing monopoly money back and forth to each other in a closed circle without cost to consumers and without cost to the government / taxpayer. Just trust us on this. We just need to get the checkbox. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I'm hearing people tell me. Mintz said that it doesn't make sense to him as an economist, but I'm really hoping that they're able to get that carbon tax level way down while still getting all of the good stuff done.
Yeah, I've just about had it over the past week with conservative insiders telling me that I'm not bright enough to understand what I absolutely just read. I find that irritating as all get out because I can completely understand what I just read, and it feels a lot like Notley's social license. And the Conservative Party federally just got cut off at the knees on this issue because they're out there in the House of Commons saying this industrial carbon tax is just a shift upstream so that the people no longer see it as a line item. They just
Yes.
see that things cost more and they don't really understand why. And they no longer see carbon tax as a line item on their natural gas bill or their electricity bill, thus insulating the Liberals from the political fallout. They're hammering that issue in the House of Commons, and then their greatest ally in the fight against carbon tax just sort of decided that she's going to concede the first ditch to the Liberals in the battle.
And this was it. Remember during the election when Carney kind of laughed at the idea of axing the tax?
Yeah.
And he said, we're going to change the carbon tax. This is what we've been warning about now
It's here.
for
It's here.
ages. Of
Yeah.
course. And so this is where it gets really frustrating when you're looking around saying, guys, come on. Like, this is a hidden carbon tax. He warned the entire time that he was going to change the carbon tax and strengthen it. Like, speaking of books, please, folks, if you have not read this book, it's important that you do.
Take it out of the library. Don't buy it.
Thank you. Take it out of the
Don't give them
library,
your money.
borrow it from a friend, you know. I'm not telling you to love it or like it or endorse it. Like, come on, we're all adults. Let's read stuff that helps us understand what's going on. Prime Minister Mark Carney, when he was the UN special envoy on blah, 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 all these issues, he wrote this book. And in it are chapter after chapter of things like carbon taxes, various forms of them. He quotes Greta Thunberg in earnest, repeatedly. This book was endorsed by Bono, okay? Carney just wrote this a couple years ago. And so this is where I'm trying to see the good parts of like actually I'm trying to be positive.
I know you are. I know you are.
Yeah.
I look at this pipeline proposal without a private sector pipeline proposal involved yet. And I look at the tangibles here. Russia isn't doing this. OPEC isn't doing this. The Americans aren't doing this. So if you were a private sector pipeline company, and the American ethos right now is drill, baby, drill, and you're looking at Canada and it's like net zero plus 600% potentially more in upstream carbon taxes, why would you invest here? Why? You know, I guess the proof is in the pudding.
It's one of those things where I'm glad you pointed out the United States. And I know we're in a tussle with U.S. President Donald Trump, and we're in the middle of a tariff war, and we just saw Algoma Steel. I just hate seeing those stories.
By the way, Algoma Steel could have made a heck of a lot of pipelines for Western Canada, but we're not a serious country.
And remember during the election when the steel workers and the pipe workers said the industrial carbon tax is going to decimate our industry? They meant Carney's industrial carbon tax.
Right.
And now if you combine this ongoing dragged out tariff war where everybody's looking over their shoulder and shivering, this is what's going to happen. And my heart breaks for those families who are hit by that.
Right at Christmas.
Right at Christmas, I know, makes me sick. When you look at the United States, I have to drive this home. They do not have a national carbon tax. They do not have a national industrial carbon tax either. And this is not because Trump doesn't want any part of this. It is right now the reason why. But Biden didn't do it. The first Trump administration didn't do it. The Obama administration didn't do it. This goes all the way back to the first President Bush, okay? Back when they went to the Rio summit, okay? It was called the Earth Day Summit back then. I remember because I was alive and watching the news. They were floating carbon taxes then. Bush Sr. said no. Bush Jr. said no. Bill Clinton said no. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. The United States is not going in on a national carbon tax. And yet we seem to be kind of steamrolling at it. And I don't know if you saw Scott Moe just yesterday say, you know what, we're digging our heels and we're not letting this go. We're going to remain carbon tax free in the province of Alberta. So something's got to shake loose here.
I also see that with the political instability in Venezuela, the Americans can gain access to the world's largest proven oil reserves in Venezuela, and they wouldn't need us at all.
Mintz flagged that too, actually. I'm going to have to start reading up on reports coming out of Venezuela because he flagged that as an issue because he said they've got a ton of oil. But yeah, about the access points. Goodness gracious. So again, I don't want to rain on parades, okay?
No.
It's a good thing to have a prime minister saying things like pipelines out loud with his face. I agree. It's good to have a prime minister signing a document that talks about lifting the production cap and talks about suspending the tanker ban. Like, that is better than it was with Trudeau.
Right.
So I will give them that. And I also know that a lot of people were really happy to see Stéphane Guilbeault leave.
Adieu. We bid him adieu. We bid him adieu.
They've seen their political careers come to an abrupt and dramatic end. Including, I would add, former Trudeau Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault. He, of course, resigned from cabinet on Thursday after the announcement of the new energy deal that repealed several of the anti-Alberta laws that he created. On behalf of all Albertans, Monsieur Guilbeault, we bid you adieu.
Did you have that cut out at your Rebel booth? Is that
no, it was at the Western Standard booth. And we took some photos with it.
Those are some great pictures of you with the cardboard cutout of Stéphane Guilbeault. So yeah, well, I'm trying to do the trust but verify thing myself right now. So, but I'm warning people here in Alberta, industrial carbon taxes aren't a good thing.
No, so. I mean, it is a conservative principle to believe that taxes applied anywhere along the supply chain end up at the end of the supply chain, which is me.
That's right.
It's just how it works.
That's right.
That's just how it works. Now, on the flip side, regardless of how that MOU is irritating me and some conservative insiders are doing their best to gaslight me into thinking that I'm stupid, because I'm not, so just stop. There were some great things coming out of the United Conservative Party AGM. And, you saw the mainstream media say Danielle Smith was booed. No, I think Canada's relationship with Alberta was repeatedly booed. I was in the room. I heard it. I saw it. I know exactly what happened. But we had some great policies that passed there. One of them is not just ramping up natural gas-fired electricity, but bringing coal back online, which has been like my fantasy football government policy since 2015. And then
I missed this. What did they say?
Yes, they passed a resolution to move back towards coal-fired electricity. And why wouldn't we? 800 years of some of the cleanest burning coal on the planet. Literally, you can kick the ground and it comes out in lots of places in this province. This is why we do pit mining and not like tunnel mining. It's so close to the surface. And the party has adopted a resolution to bring that back. And I could not be more thrilled.
So we can that would lower the electricity price, like bills for people?
Completely. It would actually bring certain generating stations back online, like Sheerness.
Do you know that there was a carbon tax on coal?
Yes.
A lot of people didn't know that because, of course, not very many people use it in their day-to-day lives. But because I had that grid in my brain all the time with the so-called consumer carbon tax, there was a carbon tax on coal. I forget how much it cost per ton or nugget or whatever they call it. But I'd be curious to know if Carney would have some sort of a carbon tax even for that thing. I did not see that. I would love to see lower electricity prices because if you have cheap electricity, you have warmer homes, you have people staying up later at night with their lights, you have more productivity. It's better for everybody and it saves people a ton of money.
Well, and coal is a reliable base load because you don't need to pipe in the product. You just dig it and then stick it in a big pile outside of the generating station. If you need more coal, it's right there. But with wind, you don't get it. If you don't have wind, you just don't have wind. If you don't have sun, you just don't have sun. And because of the way that green energy has polluted our grid on cold snaps like we just had here, we end up buying electricity at a higher rate from Saskatchewan who still uses coal. So we never actually
That's
quite
a
get
good
off of
point.
coal. We never quite actually get off of coal. We just get off of coal jobs here in Alberta because we're still buying coal from Saskatchewan, Montana, Wyoming. When we are hit with shortages, that coal is reliable and we buy it at an increased cost.
I used to point out when I was BC director a few moons ago, when Alberta was still using coal very regularly for its power, overnight, I used to like to point out to Vancouverites who were pro carbon tax and hating on pipelines and stuff. I said, yeah, you know, when you plug in your little Prius overnight, as soon as 10 o'clock p.m. hits, we're using Alberta coal to charge up your little Prius there, just so you know. Yeah, that didn't go over well. But anyway, things you learn.
Yeah, they also other resolutions that pass oppose attempts by the federal government to regulate or legislate on industrial carbon emissions within Alberta's boundaries. So that was one that was passed, which shows that that MOU is in direct contradiction with what the membership actually wants, and that's going to be a tough needle to thread.
That's a fun line for her to try to tap dance on. Okay.
Yeah.